Hello, Senator Brown.
Good to be with you. Thanks.
Thanks for calling in to Joust It Out and the MSC Radio Network. We know that you've obviously been very busy on this campaign trail. And how's it going?
Well, it's going well. I mean, in some ways, this wouldn't be a race if it weren't for the huge numbers of outside dollars. They've spent more against me, outside groups. We figure it's the oil industry. We figure it's Wall Street. They've spent $21 million in attack ads, more than any Senate race in the country. And I'm not whining about it. I'm just saying that's what politics has become, and that's why grassroots efforts like this show help us fight back and blunt those attacks, because we can't outspin them, we can out-organize them, and our message is clearer and stronger and more progressive, and that's the direction the country's going.
Yeah, and I mean, are you feeling that these attack ads are something that you've never even seen before in the sense of the intensity and certainly the expense of them?
Yeah, they're sort of record-setting in terms of the number of ads they've run, something like 35,000 different ads. They're record-setting, I guess, in the number of dollars, and they because these ads, nobody has to disclose who's actually doing them. There's just no accountability, and there's these groups like PolitiFact and FactCheck.org, these nonpartisan groups that have won Pulitzer Prizes and are fair-minded, and rate the truth, the veracity or lack of in political comments and ads and statements, have just repeatedly said so many of these ads aren't true. But they don't care because you can't pinpoint who actually is buying the ad, who's actually spending the money. So there's no accountability. And that to me is why Citizens United and all of this big money in politics is so damaging to our country, is that there's no accountability. And we think it's a handful of companies like Exxon, big Wall Street firms, and a handful of Sheldon Adelson and the Koch brothers who literally can spend tens or hundreds of millions of dollars each and just want to buy a government.
Right. And, I want to ask you this. I was thinking about this the other day, and I grew up in the East Coast, and I remember more moderate Republicans, and, when I think about where we're at today, and I'm 43 years old, and I know in my time I've seen this evolution of the Republican Party, and, your opponent here in the state is a young man who certainly has his dollars and support behind him, but do you ever feel that with folks across the aisle in the Senate, and certainly the gentlemen that the senators are supposed to be, do you ever think that they ever just sit there and say, I can't believe we're putting this guy up against, say, Sherrod Brown or, someone else in the more moderate side of the party?
Well, they just, I think you're right. I mean, you said evolution. I might use the word devolution in the party I can't count the number of Republicans that come up to me and just say, I've had it with my party because of their, just intense hostility to women's health, intense hostility to gay rights, intense hostility to sound science and the things that we as a nation have believed for so many years. And you mentioned East Coast. I mean, the Rockefeller and Cliff Case and Ed Brooke and some people in my part of the country. I mean, west of Ohio, but in Kansas, Senator Pearson and some of the congressmen and senators and congresswomen, few back then, that really were moderates and you could work with. I still have lots of things I've been able to do with conservative Republicans, but just this driven sort of really nasty edge that too many of these Tea Party people have had. And I mean, that's why we need to beat them with grassroots, because the Tea Party will always have money. It will always have the Texas billionaire oil guys, because they've always been so far right. And they want no environmental rules. They want to eviscerate labor law. They want no taxes. They want to be able to do, because it's my business and I build, I can do whatever I want. So the way to beat that is grassroots. That's why I ask people to come to sherrodbrown.com, to my website, sign up and help us. We've had 500,000 signatures in opposition to Citizens United, for instance, and we're using that sherrodbrown.com. That sort of is kind of a way to fight back, not just this year, but long term. And I'm encouraging my colleagues to do that too, because the way progressive government wins is there are a lot more of us, and we have stronger feelings, and our values are American values, and moving forward. And that's why on all the issues that we are moving in the right direction. On marriage equality, I mean, look at, I never preach patience, but what this progress we've had. When I voted against DOMA in 1990, whatever it was, 7, it was politically a bad vote in a conservative district I lived in. Now it's increasingly, people say, why not? That's what we ought to be doing. It's human rights. It's fairness, it's civil rights. And I think the country's moving in that direction in spite of all these billionaires trying to buy the government.
Well, Senator, I think that you look at your endorsements, from everywhere, from the plain dealer to, I mean, obviously the LGBTQ community and unions and just the working folks of this state that are endorsing and supporting you. I think that when you talk about that, groundswell and certainly the grassroots movement, I think that that's really where the battle is. And I know that my colleague here, Judith Pindell, wanted to mention something about obviously the war on women and stuff, but.
Sure, yeah. So you mentioned the intensity against women's health, and first want to thank you for calling us on a Women's Wednesday.
Yes.
And there's been said that there's a war on women, and then there's the opposition saying, "Well, no, there's really not a war on women." What do you have to say about that?
Well, I don't care if we use the word war on women but I do care what they're doing, and it's not just they are so hostile to Planned Parenthood. Mm-hmm. They also lie about this stuff. A Republican senator of high leadership said that 90% of Planned Parenthood's dollars or work or something is abortion, and it's the reverse of that. It's almost all of Planned Parenthood, not all, but the great preponderance of Planned Parenthood money goes to provide women's health care. Now, 3 million American women rely on Planned Parenthood for their preventive care, not just their birth control, but their primary care. And it's mostly not abortion, but they want to lie about it because that plays to their base. So this whole war on women, call it what you want, and I'm fine with that term, but the whole thing is it's also a war on the truth. Mm. And when they're going after women's health and they want to shut down, I mean, Mitt Romney wants to end any subsidies for Planned Parenthood. What is he saying to those 3 million women? Exactly. Well, sorry, you're part of the 47%. We don't care about you. I don't know what he's saying, but I do know it's hostile, and I do know that the right wing takes their calling or marching orders from Romney now. If he's going to try to eviscerate Planned Parenthood, they're just going to turn up the heat on it. And that's symptomatic of this the issue of choice. Mm-hmm. And to me, any of the social issues that are about fair play. But they just have shown total disregard for when they're opposed to the Lilly Ledbetter's coming in here next week to help us campaign. And, they voted, so many of them voted against equal pay for women. And how do you not call that a war on women when they disregard women's health and they don't want to pay women for the same work that people of my gender get, and it's just, I mean, there's no explanation for it other than hostility, and I don't know why. I asked the question when I saw some of these tapes of some of these. I mean, they're kind of right-wing nut jobs. Some of these congressmen say this stuff. When I see these tapes, first thing I always think is, did none of these guys have daughters?
Right.
I mean, I've always viewed women's health as a priority. But 30 years ago, I had my first daughter. I have 2 girls, and now with my second marriage to Connie, another daughter and a son and a daughter-in-law. But I couldn't imagine not thinking women's health is important when you have daughters. So I don't get these people. I don't understand them sometimes when they have these views.
Senator, on going back to some of the social issues, and obviously you have been a huge supporter of the LGBTQ community for a long time, both you and your wife, and thank you for that. And many of our listeners are part of the community, and I just wanted to hear your take on where we're at. I mean, obviously you talked a little about our progress we have made, which we have, but here in Ohio, where people still can be fired from their job or kicked out of the apartment or, for being in the LGBTQ community. What are your thoughts on what our next steps are or should be?
Well, my thoughts are a little bit like the economy. We're making progress. We don't want to turn back. The progress isn't fast enough. I use that example, and as I said, I'm straight, so I would never preach if as a white man, I never would preach to black people, be patient on civil rights, or to women, be patient on women's rights, or to gay people to be patient on human rights that way. So, but I do marvel at how far we've come as a nation. Everything from bullying to end to marriage equality. And mm-hmm. I know a number of couples in Ohio who have gay couples who have gone out of state to marry, and I know a number who said, "I'm going to wait till Ohio passes it." Right. And I say to them, it's going to be sooner than we think, because I think this country's. I know very few people under 40 that do anything but shrug their shoulders when you say, why shouldn't we have marriage equality? Of course we should. And so the world changes. And I think Republicans, in a political sense, Republicans got a problem. I mean, they're first of all, African-Americans, they are long gone to them. Mm-hmm. Latinos are increasingly alienated from them. And young voters, because of their views on on a whole host of young people issues, from Stafford loans at universities, to especially to gay rights and marriage equality. And when these Todd Akin characters, and Todd Akin might have sounded stupider than the average Tea Party Republican, but he votes the same as Paul Ryan and the other ones. And, he's a little more uncouth than Paul Ryan, but shake them up and one of them comes out and you get the same voting record. Right. So I think I think young voters are onto that, and that's their problem long term. And so some wiser Republicans' heads are going to say, wait a second, if we're this hostile to Latinos and immigration, and we're this hostile to young gay and lesbians and transgender people, are we ever going to win elections again in the next 20 years? We got to rethink this. And politics has a way of doing that. So that makes me even more optimistic that the haters in their party, over time, not this election, not next election, probably not the one after, but the haters in their party are going to be more and more isolated. And what's the other word I'm thinking of? Just kind of not thrown out of the party, but become less and less relevant.
Senator, with obviously you spent the day with President Obama yesterday in Columbus, and he was here just in Cleveland at CSU. And obviously, as an Ohioan, you're watching our state play out. I'm watching you on MSNBC and other networks, watching Tina Turner.
Rachel Maddow.
Yeah, just many, on all these shows, and Ohio's right in the crosshairs. What are your thoughts on that, in the sense that, obviously now when anything happens in Ohio, national media is on it. Does it make you a little concerned in the sense that we're under the scrutiny that way, or is it something that you think is very good for Ohio and even the future?
Well, of course I'm concerned, because I think it's a close election here, and understand I'm the only Democratic elected official in the state, so the state leans Republican. Obviously, Democrats can win it. Our congressional delegation is, I think, 11-5 Republican, and so we got work to do. But I think the auto rescue, I think collective bargaining, I think Romney is just not a sympathetic character. I mean, he had a good debate last week. Okay,
right.
Great. And I hope he doesn't have another one. I hope the president has a better one next time, and I think he will. I mean, he's just ready to go. He's ready for the next. He's a competitive guy, and he's smart, very smart, and. But we're going to win the state. And, I mean, the cool thing about living in Ohio is, one, we get to live here. Second is we get to, in many ways, not to sound arrogant, but we get to decide who the next president is. Because I just can't imagine if the president wins Ohio, and I think he will, that I can't imagine that Romney can possibly find a path to the White House. So we're feeling good about it.
Well, a final question, because you have spent so much time with the president, and you're certainly a big ally of his, and we are so critical. From a personal side from you, what do you feel when you're with the man? I've never had the honor of meeting the president, and I know that you have many times, and certainly are probably a friend of his, I guess, to a point at this point. So, what are your thoughts on him as a human being?
I think he senses his place in history, and I think he realizes the responsibility on his shoulders. He knows that this election, I mean, it's hard to know. It's hard to get in the mind of a president of the United States. I mean, he looks at the world differently from anybody, and there's no way to understand what he does and goes through. And I knew him. I mean, I did not know him intimately, but knew him before he's president. Know him now, but I think he understands particularly how this election matters to so many people in this country, where he came from working class parents, and not just racially, but where he came from in terms of basically a working class kid that got opportunity and was able to succeed. And he knows that path is blocked for far too many Americans, and he wants to open that path. And he thinks about the Supreme Court. I know he thinks about what happens if he loses the next 20 years in this country.
Oh,
so
my goodness, yeah.
He's ready to go on this next debate and ready to go to lead us. And I'm counting on him, and I think all of us are.
Well, Senator, we really appreciate you calling in, and I just want to let you know that we have put a link on our Joust It Out page on Links of the Roundtable to anyone to go to your campaign site, to donate, to support, to volunteer, to get involved, and our audience needs to do that. And Senator, you're a great man. We're honored to have you on the show, and just honored to have you as our senator.
I really appreciate that. Thanks, Joe. Appreciate both of you. Judith, thank you, too.
Thank you.